Good day, dear students. We are continuing Act 1 of The Fire and the Rain by Girish Karnad. In the previous class, you have seen how the prologue introduces certain characters, and in Act 1, you are being introduced to the rest of the characters. But you will find that the permission for the drama was given in the prologue, and the drama proper starts in Act 1. The play is divided into three acts with a prologue in the beginning and an epilogue towards the end. So here you find in The Fire and the Rain, Act 1, Aravasu and Nithilai, they are going on and they are very happy because Nithilai's father had agreed to their union, and Aravasu is to propose to her before the villagers, the elders of the village, and he agrees to that. And so, very happily, they are coming back, and Aravasu had an appointment with the Yavakri. Yavakri had given instructions to him that he is to meet at a certain place when the sun is exactly overhead. So they are just coming along, and on the way, they reach the hermitage of Yavakri's father. This hermitage was guarded by Andhaga, a man who is blind, and he is there as the guard, and he is familiar with the footsteps of all the dear ones of his master, master's son, then master's brother and brother's son, Arvasu. All these people are familiar to him. So Arvasu and Nithilai comes, and Arvasu really wanted to take out his acting skills there and make sure that Andaga can be tricked by the imitation of the sound or the footsteps of the animals. He imitates the sound of animals, then mimics them, but Andaga recognizes them correctly. Nitilai makes fun of him, and the two of them, Arvasu again start imitating other animals, and all these were correctly recognized by Andaga. He says that even though he just do not have the eyes, his ears are tuned to the sounds, and so he will be able to recognize the sound of the footstep, even if Arvasu is very cautious about walking around and trying to trick Andaga. And then, when Nithila and Arvasu were about to go, forgetting all about their appointment, Andaga reminds him that Yavakri had given instruction, and you are to meet him there. And so Arvasu immediately remembers that he is to meet him when the sun is overhead exactly. So that word exactly is significant because Yavakri had insisted on the time, the exact time. He doesn't want anyone to go wrong with the time or anything. That kind of a person he is. Then you find that there is an assessment of the characters, but here you will find that it is indeed proper to understand that um, that Yavakri was understood by Andaga. Andaga had been there for a long time, so he knows Yavakri. So that's why he insisted that I was to keep the appointment at exactly the right time. On the other part of the stage, there is Vishaga, who's 26 years old. She is the wife of Paravasu, and you will find Yavakri and Vishaga. Vishaga has come to fill her pot, and she is about to go. She has come to fill the pot with water at that hill, and from a small there is a hole, and that gives clear water, and it is limited, but even then she needs to take a little bit of water from there for a pot of water for the house, and Yavakri was waiting for him there. And so when she finished filling the pot and is about to go, Yavakri confronts her, and he stops her and reminds her of the earlier days when the two of them were very friendly and were almost in love, and how Vishaga had bid farewell to Yavakri and all those things. The days before he went to the forest to attain knowledge. That was 10 years back. So you can imagine Vishaga at his 16 years and bidding farewell to Yavakri. And maybe she thought that she was in love with Yavakri. So here you find that this woman has become so very haggard because of the poverty and also because of the hardship of her life. The hardship because there is no water and everywhere there is famine and famine and suffering, and her youth has almost dwindled into nothing. She had that haggard look, and it is at this time that Yavakri confronts her, reminds her of the beautiful time that they had, and naturally, Vishaka was impressed, or maybe she was touched by the way Yavakri reminded her. And so here you find that the story or the incidents that led to her marriage to Paravasu, Yavakri's cousin, was explained. She was she has no option except to remain there. Yavakri had gone to the forest to attain knowledge. He wanted knowledge at once, and not in the way Paravasu and Paravasu's father and Yavakri's father had attained knowledge, that is slow and steady. He doesn't want to wait that much. He wants it immediately. And so when Yavakri went away to attain knowledge to for Tabas, uh, Vishaga was left alone, and her father had indeed the father was the one who arranged her marriage with Paravasu, that is Yavakri's cousin. So when Yavakri explains the performing of austerities and how God Indra appeared before him, he says that it is very easy to say that performing austerities and God Indra appeared to him. It comes very easily to you. That is, when you speak about it, it goes like that. Everything is condensed in one sentence. 10 years of the performing austerities, 10 years of hardship, 10 years of suffering, and 10 years of going without proper food, and 10 years of hallucinating life, 10 years of mosquito bite. So he asked for knowledge, and finally he thought that God had appeared, and on and off this happened, and finally he was able to see God before him. God Indra appeared to him and told him that knowledge must come with experience. Knowledge is time, it is space. You must move through these dimensions. So here, God is explaining the attainment of knowledge because knowledge is attained through time. It is not amassed at once. It is not to be gobbled up. It is to be. It is to come in drops and droplets, and then fill in that space. And you must go through these dimensions, and then you will be filled with knowledge. This was God Indra's opinion. But Devakri continues, and he says he was not ready to wait. He was not satisfied with the drops. He wanted the whole thing at once. And so he continues, and finally, God Indra was forced to give him this boon that is knowledge. And he thinks, Devakri thinks that he had won, and he assesses something. He knew that he had some knowledge, but probably little wisdom. Mark you, this is very important because knowledge and wisdom are two different things. You can acquire knowledge, but wisdom must be given, must be God given. And so he had not attained wisdom, but only knowledge. And he remembers in vivid detail the meeting they had 10 years ago. That Vishaga was all eager for him. Now she is different. And Vishaga reminds him that you are now talking to another man's wife. But Yavakri wants to continue from where he had stopped 10 years ago. He doesn't want to listen to her telling him that she is Paravasu's wife. He refused to listen to that. He turned a blind or a deaf ear to that and almost forces her to his way of thinking. But Vishaka speaks of a marriage to Parvasu because now she is in a dilemma. Dilemma in the sense that 10 years back, Yavakri left her. Now, after marriage of 3 years, Parvasu left her for 7 years of fire sacrifice. And fire sacrifice being the chief priest, he can't come home, he can't be with his wife. And so, this wife, young wife, was left alone. So, both men in her life left her. So, she speaks of a marriage of Parvasu and tells him that for 1 year it was a fulfilling one. And the next 2 years it was a discovery. And then the invitation for fire sacrifice came. And the invitation for Paravasu was to be the chief priest of the fire sacrifice, which was something that any Brahmin priest will adore to have. It is a prestigious enough post. For 7 years, he is to be the chief priest. Of course, he'll have to leave the family, but of course, he'll have to chant the mantras throughout the day, and of course, he'll have to be there. But that is what a Brahmin is taught to do from his very young days on. And in a way, it is the culmination to be the chief priest. And Paravasu left her for 7 years, and she was fed up with both Yavakri and Paravasu. And so, when Yavakri speaks of his desire and speaks of how loving she was, she just melts and agrees to continue. Or in a way, she was like a starved being, and they go behind a dry chamba tree and on the banks of that river, the dry river, and they have their way with them. During this time, Nithilaya and Aravasu, prompted by Andaga and instructed by Yavakri, reaches this place. And they find that the place was empty. But they search everywhere and find, and not find, but they discover the couple in a strange poster. And so both of them were shocked because they had not expected Yavakri and Vishaga. Vishaga is Aravasu's brother's wife to be in such a place and in such a, condition. And Yavakri, when confronted by Aravasu, was without any shame. And he further instructs Aravasu. So here you will find that Yavakri had achieved something. He had planned and plotted the seduction of Vishaga to be witnessed by Aravasu and to be reported to Paravasu. So this is what he had already planned, but we have no idea what it is until he speaks. And Vishaga was really suspicious of the way Yavakri was very cool about being discovered by Aravasu, and then she gets an inkling as to what Yavakri was about, and she was so filled uh, with a sort of contempt for Yavakri and understands that he had not grown up. He is still that boy who left 10 years back, and he had not returned a grown up man. He is the petty little boy that he was. So that was again something that Yavakri had not expected. But Yavakri was victorious because now he knew that this news about Vishaga and himself will be taken to the house, and Paravasu will hear about it because news travels very easily, even in those times. And so this is going to be a shameful thing for the chief priest because the chief priest's wife had been with another man, and so this is going to be a shame for Paravasu. Yavakri wanted exactly that. Why? Because this man, Yavakri, in spite of his austerities and God Indra appearing before him, is so very petty about human emotions and he doesn't have the broad mindedness to let things go. He wanted to take revenge, like the petty boy that he is, as Vishaga had analyzed him to be. And by doing this, he thought that he is getting back at Paravasu. He had little thought about Vishaga, and that is what really hurt her. And she knew that this is how the men are going to be. So Vishaga was about to enter the hermitage before Aravasu, and Raibaya, her father-in-law, was confronting them. Unexpectedly, he is there. Somehow or other, Yavakri had an idea that Rabia will be there, and she must go and confront him, and Rabia will understand something. And this is another plan that Yavakri had. So Vishaga was confronted by Rabia. He checks her, and he finds the truth about her and Yavakri. Even though she refused to speak, he talks to Aravasu, and Aravasu immediately says that he was with Nithilai. And was there any other man with her, with Vishaga? And he refuses to answer, but Vishaga also tells him that Yavakri was there. And so he was so filled with anger, he starts lashing at Vishaga. And not only that, being a Brahmin who had attained knowledge, he has all the mantras with him and all the mantras which will enable him to punish the other person. So Raibaya leaves her fate to Paravasu because Parvasu is her husband, and so he will deal with her. But for Yavakri, his brother's son, he has another punishment. And the punishment is that a Brahmin just cannot kill another person. So he conjures a Brahma Rakshasa to kill Yavakri. So by chanting the mantra, he asks Vishaga to bring the bottle of the pot of water that she had brought in, and taking a little bit of water, he chants the mantras and conjures up the Brahma Rakshasa and gives order to kill Yavakri. But when Vishaga and Aravasu, shocked by this behavior of Rabeya, pleads for the life of Yavakri, he relents and he gives one option that if Yavakri can hide in his father's hermitage in the next 24 hours, he'll be saved. That is the only condition. And on hearing that, both Vishaga and Aravasu runs away from there and goes in search of Yavakri, whom they had left at that chambak tree. And so there both of them, both Vishaga and Aravasu, when they just run there and pleads with the Yavakri to leave the place and go back to his father's hermitage. But Yavakri, in his ego, hesitates because he doesn't want to appear as if he is bending before Raibaya. He doesn't want to. He is the one who had amassed knowledge, so he doesn't want to be much any less than the others. Always that condition was there. Yavagri felt that he was always inferior to his uncle and his uncle's son Parvasu, and that complex was still there. And even though he had acquired knowledge, he hesitates. His ego is there such that he doesn't want to hide in his father's hermitage. But he understands that the Brahmaraksasa was instructed to kill him. He understands that. So he also starts running. The Brahmarakshasa follows him, and when he is about to enter the hermitage, Andaga, who was guarding the hermitage, stops him because Andaga did not recognize the agitated footsteps of his master's son, Yavakri. Yavakri, whom he had known from birth on, Yavakri, whom he had brought up, Yavakri, whom he had been there, who had been with him for a long time, except for the 10 years, and he refused to, or he just did not recognize the footsteps of Yavakri. He thought that it was some stranger trying to enter the hermitage, trying to do harm to his master's hermitage. So he stops him with all his might, with all his strength. And at that moment, the Brahmaraksasa comes in and kills Yavakri with his trident. And Yavakri falls dead in the arms of Andaga, the one person who had been guarding his father's hermitage, and the one person who had known him from the very childhood on, and the one person who ought to recognize his footstep, but somehow or other it was not done. He falls dead in the arms of Andaga. Vishaga looks on helpless, Aravasu also. And Andaga, when he realizes the enormity of what he had done, starts weeping, heartbroken, because it never occurred to him that it could be Yavakri. And it just did not appear to him that he failed to recognize dear Yavakri's footstep. That was the greatest sadness. And how this happened, he had no idea. And so here you will find that this is something that happened, and this is not his fault exactly, but maybe Yavakri also was at fault because he hesitated to start running immediately, or else he would have really entered. He would have called out to Andaga, and he would have entered the hermitage. But so here you will find that whatever that is to happen, the Brahmarakshasa had been called forth to kill Yavakri, and he must fulfill that order. And so it was made to happen in this manner. And both Vishaga and Aravasu, they just look on, seeing Andaga holding the dead body of Yavakri in his arms. Yavakri, who had done 10 years of tabas and 10 years of austerities, and attained knowledge at once, the whole knowledge without wisdom, is now lying dead. And you must remember the two questions that Nitilai had. One is why did he not, that is how he can predict the time of his death, and the other is when will the rains come. And so Yavakri turns to her and says that I can't predict my time of death, but I can predict yours. You will be dead within a month. And Nitilai was really surprised because she had asked this question somewhere else, and Yavakri had heard that question, and this is what really surprised her. And so you find that there is a lot that is going on, which is beyond the understanding of a common person like Nitilai, and Aravasu is just a witness there, always in the background, but not in the forefront. He had good intentions, but he knows that it is useless to fight against the great power of his father, and he can't really persuade his father not to conjure up the Brahmarakshasa. And Vishaka was also totally helpless. She knows that she had done wrong, but she is not justifying herself to her father in law because it is to be done to her husband. And so she was saved a fate from her father in law, and everything was taken out on Yavakri. And Vishaga says that both of them are at fault, and it is not right that one should be punished and the other should be left alone. And Raibaya was totally against any sort of reasoning. This is why he had immediately conjured up the Brahmarakshasa and given him the order to kill Yavakri. So here, when Act One ends, you have the crime, or in a way, the death of Yavakri, a person who had attained knowledge, a person who had uh, really just snatched the boon from the gods. It's not given like with all the benevolence by the gods. He had forced the gods to give him the boon, and when you force the gods to give them your boon, they will also have something to go with it. And there is an interesting story where you have the that is yeah, in Greek story you will find that there was a lady, or the he was she was the one person, a prophetess, and she asked for a boon from God Apollo, and that is she took a handful of uh, sand from the beach, from the seashore, and she was asked that she can ask for any boon, and she says, well, I want to live as many years as there are the grains of sand in my hand. That was too much, okay, too much for a human being. And the gods were forced to grant her that boon because they told her that she can ask for a boon, and it was granted. The result was that she had to live for years and years and years and years, that she had shrunk to such a level that people just couldn't see her. So they put her in a bottle and hung the bottle on the branch of a tree. So if they want advice, they consulted her, and she answered from this bottle, because gods cannot take back the boon that they have given one person, and her only wish now is the death wish. At least death come and save me. She can't, because she'll have to live through those number of years that she had asked for as a boon. This is how, when you force gods to give you a boon, gods trick you. And this is exactly what happened in the case of Yavakri also. He forced God Indra to give him the boon of infinite knowledge, or a lot of knowledge, and that was granted to him. Even though God Indra persuaded him, or given him the direction of how to acquire knowledge, he was adamant. Yavakri was adamant, and the boon was granted to him, but without its wisdom. Okay, and so the death happened. So, what is the use of that boon? It is totally useless to the one person who got it. So, this is what happens when you force gods to grant you the boon in such a forceful manner, in such a manner. And so, whether it is in our country or in the other countries, Greek countries also, these kind of stories really exist. And in their epics and in our epics also, you will find a lot of stories like this. And as you know, Girish Karnad was fascinated by this story from the great epic Mahabharata, and you will get a short summary of it in your text, and read through that, and really enjoy the drama, the dramatic situation. You have already seen the film of 1 hour duration, and the film is up to this, that is till Act 1, prologue and Act 1, and we have finished up to that. We'll see you, we'll continue with Act 2 in the next class. Enjoy your vacation. Thank you.